Today on Classroom Dynamics.
One of our major goals is to help people understand that neuroscience helps us understand reading as anything but natural. And that what we are as teachers doing is trying to incorporate in our teaching the major components of the reading brain and what the child brings to it that we can help connect. Okay, now we've talked about expanding foundational skills, and at the top of the list is phonics and phoneme awareness.
Welcome to the place where ideas collide. Adam Todd's here to be your guide. For teachers and techies, chasing the spark. Classroom dynamics, where we leave our mark. Let's dive in deep, the future's bright. Innovation shines like morning light. Teachers and tech, hand in hand we go. Welcome to the Classroom Dynamics Show.
Classroom Dynamics is sponsored in part by Logitech Education, empowering student voice and creativity with innovative tools like the Logitech Reach Adjustable Content Camera and the Zone Learn headset designed specifically for student comfort and focus. Discover how Logitech is transforming classrooms at logitech.com/education. Welcome to Classroom Dynamics, the podcast where we unlock the future of education. Hi everybody, I'm your host Adam Todd, and today we're honored to welcome back a true visionary in literacy and learning, Dr. Maryanne Wolf, the director of the Center for Dyslexia, Diverse Learners, and Social Justice at UCLA, and professor in residence in the School of Education and Information Studies. Dr. Wolf joins us today to share exciting updates about the RAVE-O program, her groundbreaking fluency-based reading program, and to give teachers some concrete tips and tricks for teaching phonics and the basics to those who are learning to read, including her team's latest work expanding foundational skills through the innovative POSSUM framework, a powerful approach to helping classrooms better support all learners. Stay with us as this conversation bridges research, practice, and heart. It's all coming up next on Classroom Dynamics, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Classroom Dynamics is brought to you in part by Higher Ground Gear and the Vaulted Cell Phone Pouch, the smarter, faster way to create phone-free classrooms. Built with military-grade construction, RF shielding, and a high-decibel Velcro closure that stops distractions before they start, Vaulted keeps learning focused and secure. No locks, no end-of-the-day bottlenecks, just durable, easy-to-clean protection that gives students what they need most: attention, connection, and calm. Upgrade your school's approach to distraction-free learning with Vaulted at Higher Ground Gear. For more information, visit hggear.com today or contact us at info@hggear.com. Today, we're joined once again by Dr. Maryanne Wolf, Director of the Center for Dyslexia, Diverse Learners, and Social Justice at UCLA, and Professor in Residence in the School of Education and Information Studies. Dr. Wolf is returning to the podcast for a follow-up to last year's insightful conversation, and this time she's here to share exciting updates on the RAVE-O program and her team's ongoing work with the POSSUM framework, which expands foundational skills for diverse learners in classrooms everywhere. Welcome back to Classroom Dynamics. This is awesome. We had such an awesome show last year, and it really has resonated with a lot of people because it's become one of our top downloaded episodes. And I think the information that you brought to the show has really truly hit home to a lot of teachers from all grade levels. So welcome back.
Thank you, Adam. It's so exciting and fun. I mean, I never do a sequel.
Part 2.
This is part 2. But unlike other sequels where you think, oh, it's a little disappointing, I know with your question, we're going to have fun 2 times in a row.
Of course. We had such a great time. And for those of you who did miss the episode, go back last year and listen to it, either before or after this one, however it works out, however it shakes out. You'll find out so much about the science of reading that you may not have been aware of that might really help you in your classroom. So let's actually start with all that and the RAVE-O program. It's long been known for its focus on fluency and comprehension through multiple multiple linguistic pathways, and it's often described as a program that helps students pretty much think differently about words. And I love the way that's put, right? So
Yes.
can you explain what that means in practice and how teachers can create similar moments of that discovery for their struggling readers, especially for those kids who really are having a tough time?
Oh gosh, Adam, this is one of my favorite questions because we've been working on it for 2 decades. As you remember, we have all these randomized controlled treatment studies from NICHD, thanks to Reed Lyon and Peggy McCardle and all these wonderful people there. But the reality is that during COVID, we discovered that what teachers need to be able to do with an intervention program is not to, at the very last minute, start putting all these books and components and everything together. So we changed it to a hybrid intervention in which all the materials for the teacher are on a platform. But now you remember my book, Reader Come Home,
Right.
The Brain in a Digital World. All the materials facing the child are print. We have wonderful new books, but we don't have just books. We have chapter books. We have series. We have materials that they write with, writing being an ever more important aspect of what I call deep reading. But for those who have never heard me and didn't hear us last year, let me just say a few words about the intellectual background, the principles from cognitive neuroscience that guided its development in the beginning and all the way to its evolution today. So it began as what we called, and at that point, nobody used the word multi-component intervention. In fact, my colleague Robin Morris and Maureen was kinder, Maureen Lovett, they said, who is going to ever even pronounce multi-component or multi-component, much less use it. But it's become more popular today because people realize that when you study the reading brain, you realize that the development of that first reading brain circuit has to connect multiple component parts. And those begin before reading. This is one of the things that I love to tell people. Reading begins in infancy. It begins on a lap in which we're learning all these different language and cognitive and affective processes. So RAVE-O emerges, if you will, like the first reading brain circuit as a way to connect what the child knows in language and is able to connect to what we teach in phonics and phoneme awareness. Unlike any other program, this one is totally based on connecting what the child knows about words from 5 different perspectives, each perspective being a different component in the brain. Now, if you remember, and obviously you did, I use an acronym, POSSUM. Now, I know a lot of people think this is an ugly garbage-eating marsupial, which Reed Lyon once said. And I agree, it's definitely garbage eating, but I use it because it also has an extra meaning which is essential. And that is, in Latin, it means to enable. Well, the POSSUM approach is our way of enabling children to connect the phonemes of a word to the letter patterns. That's the orthography. So the P stands for phonics and phonology. Also, I have to tell you, it also stands for prosody and polysemy. But the P is especially for phonology and phonics. And the O is for the orthographic letter patterns that are in the English language from the beginning to all the way, to middle school, etc. But most people do a great job of teaching phonics and phoneme awareness. The science of reading has often been too narrowly conceptualized as only the PO of POSSUM. But the reality is the brain doesn't ever just connect a letter and a sound when you're really beginning to read. It's connecting that to the word, and the knowledge underneath the word is beautiful and extensive. So when I say S for semantics, I'm going way beyond what people do in vocabulary. They want to learn all these words on Friday. No, no, no. When we study words in POSSUM, we are studying the multiple meanings of that word, the multiple associations to it. We are building a network around the semantic areas of the brain. And so people use the word vocabulary and I say, oh, that's fine, that's good. But it's not to be thought of as a checklist in our approach. Rather, it is to be connected immediately to the visual pattern of the word, the phonemic representation of the word. And so what you are doing is beginning to connect the reading circuit. Now, just a little later in our teaching, it's the same day, but a little later in the time you're doing this, we connect it to the child's beginning understanding, that a word like bat, for example, can be a noun and it can be a verb. Right. So we're beginning to add syntax. Now, the U is for understanding. The POSSUM's U is for understanding both at the foundational level, that a word is made of sounds and that a sound can be represented by these letters, not just one letter, but sometimes two letters, etc., etc. But it also is the U for understanding what that word means in the context of sentences and paragraphs and stories. So this is it's an unusual, if you will, viewpoint on what the cognitive contributions are. And so when we're talking about reading, we're talking about cognitive, linguistic, perceptual, and affective component parts. Now, the M is one of my favorite things to talk about because for 20 years, I am just revealing how long I have been in this field. For 20 years, I've been telling people how important morphemes are for fluency. Because a morpheme, these tiny little markers, if you will, that are part of our English language, give you, if you will, a step up in terms of visual orthographic chunking, because you learn to see them, so they become visual chunks. But here's the secret sauce of morphemes. Not just is it a visual pattern or a visual chunk, but it changes the meaning of a word, and it can change the syntactic function. So in our first lessons, if you can imagine, we absolutely eschew the idea that morphemes are taught in third grade or fourth grade as they used to be. Now, I believe everybody understands that even if you only teach 4 morphemes in first grade, you are teaching the principle of what a morpheme does to a word. So now I have to say, Adam, in all, if you will, modesty, even though I've been emphasizing it for a long time before other people did. Oh my God, there's so many people 20 years ago who believed this. But now I see people with the stickers that say morphemes are sexy. And I'm so happy. This is what Mount St. Joseph, they made me stickers that say morphemes are sexy. So we have
because that's where it finally comes together, right? That's where it all ends up in the classroom.
Exactly. I'm so glad you said that. Adam, I'm talking way too much, way too fast. I'm so sorry. I apologize. It's only because I know you now and I just keep talk.
But you're hitting on the things that, when, teachers will teach, right? They'll teach phonics, but sometimes, I'm not saying it's everybody, but sometimes I don't think they understand so much of the weight behind it to actually get that across, to get those lessons across.
Oh, we want so much for not only students to have this information, we want our teachers to be actually excited about this approach. And the one thing I will say to you, though, and to all the teachers listening, Possum is another way of thinking about how we expand the foundational skills to be sure that fluency and fluent comprehension occur. So in the RAVE-O program, the first part of the lesson, now this is going to surprise some of your readers. It's not showing yet the actual, if you will, word. Rather, we take a word out of a treasure chest and say, does anyone know what this word means? So let's go back to bat. So we have the very important science of learning concept, getting the child to attend and be engaged. Now, I really want our teachers to know we are absolutely foundational in terms of phonics and phoneme, but we believe from the science of learning, but also our own work with children, that the best way to begin is the participation, elicitation of the child's attention and, if you will, courtship with language. So we ask them what this word means. And let's say it's bat, and then they give us one meaning. And we say, does anybody know another meaning? And then we start stretching what they say. And then we put images. We have built images for every meaning of every word in RAVE-O. And these images give another aspect from the science of learning. And that is, we are aiding their visual memory by giving an image of this word's first meaning or second meaning or third meaning. You are helping them consolidate in memory that there are multiple meanings for this word. Now, you remember I said the word P also means polysemy?
Right.
Now, Adam, you will know this because we've talked about it, but this is a linguistic term that most teachers have never had, and they don't realize that the majority of our earliest primer words are polysemous. They have multiple meanings.
Right.
So
you're really hitting on something. You're not just hitting it the first time. You're really giving the kids almost like these multiple levels to understand and absorb what that word is, how to pronounce it correctly, and of course, the meaning behind both versions or multiple versions if it is more than one.
Absolutely. You are absolutely hitting it on the head. We're giving multiple opportunities to learn the word in all its possible uses in the English language. And that's really not what most learners come to you with. They think a word has one meaning, and then they realize they know more than that. But it's a principle of the English language. And so you're actually pushing me to say something that you and I have talked about before. RAVE-O is very much a tool in the toolkit of a teacher to teach how the English language works. That's for every child, whether monolingual, bilingual, multilingual, bidialectal, etc. All these children need to learn ever more beautifully how the English language works. So a lot of people think of the English language as a phonemic language. It's a morpho-phonemic language. And so and this is
That's important. That's actually really important to understand for teachers, because I think when they're teaching, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but when
I want you to interrupt me.
But it's such a perfect thing to look at, because if you really think about, I know we mentioned it before in the past episode that we did about you mentioned it clear that first grade is that is the sweet spot. And
Yes.
Really, if you really go back and you think about how teachers do this, to understand that phonics is not always just phonics. I mean, yes, phonics is phonics to some degree, but you have these other ways to look at it that, teachers, I don't think understand or have never been taught or don't even just know, obviously, if they're not listening or being able to attend a class like you might be giving to students. I think it makes a huge difference in terms of understanding how to then deliver all that in terms of phonics.
Exactly. And I'm going to use this as a way of saying that philosophically and pedagogically, it is important for me for people to understand that phonics and foundational skills have been conceptualized too narrowly. The science of reading has been conceptualized too narrowly. Now, I use POSSUM as an acronym, but the reality is what we're talking about is a very simple phrase. The more the child knows about a word, the better that child will not only read it, but understand it fluently and more broadly. So the more you know about a word, the better you'll read it.
That's
Both
important.
accuracy and fluency. And that is really somehow people people say, "Oh, I do this. I do phonemes. I do vocabulary. I do this." The reality is the reading brain isn't a checklist. It's a vehicle to build a circuit of connected parts. Now that's what that RAVE-O stems from that philosophy. Everything is to be connected, and we connect it within 2 days. Within every 2 days of RAVE-O, they get first the elicitation of meaning and they get images. Then immediately after, they get, whether you call it synthetic phonics. I don't care what word, whether you talk about synthetic or analytic phonics, we do both. We begin with the rhyme pattern of bat, so we're doing at, and then we add the onset or starter. But we're teaching, now think about what we're doing. The rhyme is both phonological and visual as a chunk. So we're teaching them that words can be put together. So it's also adding to blending. But we use synthetic and analytic phonics right after meaning, and then we begin to build from that. And we build syntactic uses, and we build, again, on the first 2 days, we begin to, a bat can be this form of bat, the wooden instrument, and then it could be a winged animal over the bridges of Austin, Texas. I'm kidding, but it's true. It's true. But then they're trying on how the morpheme will help them. So when you say bats, you can use the word bats for the plural, or you can use bats for the present tense of a verb.
And teachers shouldn't be afraid to do this, because kids that age can absorb all that at the same time.
They can absorb. And of course, I am absolutely always worried about the Vygotsky principle of proximal zone of development, so that we don't overload, but we also don't shy away from what we know they can learn. Now,
stay away from the checklist is like what you just said. Stay away from the checklist and go for it.
Go for it. Yeah. Go for it. Add that morpheme and show bat. Now, how do we do that? The next moment, or whatever moment, the next day perhaps, we have a minute story in which there is the 2-minute stories. One is a bat minute story with the animal. One is a bat minute story with the wooden instrument bat. But we use it with all these meanings and all these morphemes to show how they are. And these are the tiniest little minute stories. Adam, you know this from last year, but I have 2 degrees in English literature, which people will say, how in the world did an English major write these stories? Let me tell you, they get better over time, I promise you. But it is remarkable how much the children learn and enjoy these stories that embody the same words they're learning in all their context in a tiny little minute story. And right now we're all the way into module, if you will, 3 and 4, and deep reading is becoming, our focus. But from the very, very start. And Adam, I'm going to really insist that your audience hears this one thing. Our children want to read. They want to love to read, to engage them in these minute stories. And that's why they're all print. Some of them might seem silly to you, but we are really trying to do 3 things. We're trying to engage their attention and their own knowledge by building background knowledge. because these are fiction and nonfiction. Second, we want to teach the child the importance of empathy. The E in the new RAVE-O stands for empathy. I've never been more worried about empathy in our country as now. I want
Yeah.
desperately from the start to have our children be able to see stories. We have this wonderful set of stories. I love them so much. They're called Meg and Lil. Meg is a dyslexic, sports African. She can do everything. And Lil, her friend Lil, is living in a wheelchair, but she can read everything. She can write everything, whereas Meg is dyslexic and can't read a thing.
Hmm.
And Meg and Lil's friendship is one of the things that I really think teaches empathy. Meg helps Lil, Lil helps Meg, and Lil actually teaches the RAVE-O principles of POSSUM in the things that she teaches Meg. It's so fun. It's really fun.
I love
But
the social emotional aspect of it. Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, we're after that in spades. But one of the things that Meg and Lil say to each other, Meg gets very discouraged, and Lil says to Meg, "You know, Meg, you have wings on your legs, but reading gives you wings on your mind, and together we can fly to the moon." And I just love it. It's like, we're also talking about how our differences can help each other. We have a
Right.
whole set of
Right.
stories on dog and frog, big dog, little frog, and how their very differences help them with
And
each
the
other.
and the more they understand the vocabulary and those words that they're reading, the more they're going to want to read more and understand it, because they're not going to say, "Oh, I can't do it. I don't understand," and just throw it away, and that'd be it.
Everything is connected. Every foundational skill possum is connected within 1 to 2 days and connected to stories. And along the way, I have to tell you, the strengths are very important for us to emphasize. So a lot of the work goes into things like music. We have our own little RAVE-O town. Bats, and
Nice.
dogs, tracks. Again, the music is a piece of what helps phonology.
It's engaging. It's engaging too for the
It's
kids. You know.
engaging, and it's using polysemy, dogs, tracks, and bats,
And for
all
those
this.
daydreamers, those once in a while daydreamers, or if you lost them
Oh,
a minute or two, they're coming right
yeah,
back in.
they're coming right back. And we have charades and all this. But the point is, we are making a marriage between science and story. And as I told you, I've written this white paper for the Albert Shanker Institute called Elbow Room: How the Reading Brain Teaches Us to Teach. And within that, I want to show how our balanced literacy and whole language teachers, with their beautiful knowledge bank about stories and literature and emphasis on vocabulary, um, is is not to be in this thrown away, disenfranchised mode. But if they know that the foundational skills incorporates their knowledge, incorporates it, that everybody needs to expand their knowledge base. And that's what the reading brain, that's the elbow room. Shakespeare, I marry my soul at last has elbow room. I want elbow room for teachers. And I want our science of reading teachers, God bless them. They've learned all this, but they often haven't expanded to possum. They're doing the big PO and maybe even a M these days, but they're leaving out that SSU.
Mm.
And so we want them to expand, and we want our balanced literacy teachers to expand their knowledge with the science. So RAVE-O is an attempt to show an example of how the reading brain connects everything and helps our children learn. So of course, I'm awfully interested in whether or not a program like RAVE-O can teach teachers principles that they may not ever use RAVE-O. They may not ever even see it. But if we can, because of it, teach teachers these principles, we're going to be so much better off. And I even have letters every unit, a letter from the author telling why you're doing everything that week or that set of weeks.
I love that aspect.
I,
That's a great aspect because at least there's meaning for the teacher to
ex-
drive them to do what they need to do as well. That's great.
but you know what, Adam, and you know this, that's what your whole classroom dynamics is about. You're engaging the teacher in knowledge. And that's, I think we forget sometimes that engagement is not only for the learner who in your classroom. Teachers
The
are
adults. Yeah,
lifelong learners. We're
absolutely.
all learners. And so this is sometimes I say I'm a subversive teacher educator in these letters because, they just look like a letter from the author, but if possible, I'm really doing it as a way for them to learn something that they can utilize, not just in reading, but across disciplines. You
This
know,
purpose.
purpose.
When you
And
have that purpose in a classroom, and it's a great point too. It's so many things happen during the course of the day, right? As a
yes,
teacher,
yes.
it is just amazing how much can happen in the course of a
Oh
day.
gosh, yes.
But to have that purpose as to why you're going, this is the goal for today. This is the goal for this
Yes,
week. This is the goal for this month.
yes.
Especially in early childhood, it really does help set that tone so that I would imagine, comes through in their lessons and then ends up in the place where you want it to end up.
I think teaching as all of us who have been in it in various ways, and as you know, I taught before I went after, my graduate degrees. It changed my whole life. Everything I do now gets involved in I guess it's not idealism, it's simply the goal we all have. How can we make the next generation better? How can we make each member have their best chance? And obviously, I look at the struggling reader as the group that I most want to have been given their chance at meeting their potential. Now, in dyslexia, I think you might remember my first son is dyslexic.
Right.
My second son is dysgraphic. They're both dysnomic. I know my first son could have fallen through the cracks so easily. Instead, he's, I think, just an extraordinary artist. He was able to meet his potential, but only because of teachers. Teachers. Now, I want to give teachers, I want to give them the gratitude that I will never cease having because I could have lost my son.
Hmm.
I could have lost him. There was that moment when the graffiti was done under the bridge in Boston, and God knows what would have happened, if he had pursued that. Instead, he was given his chance. And actually, I think this, RAVE-O came about because my oh my gosh, Mary Briggs, I'll never forget her, was his OG tutor. And she gave him so much, but he was a fluency kid, right? And he needed OG and he needed something more. And that's when I put a lot of effort into saying, what will it take to make fluent comprehending readers everywhere? I was always behind him. He never got RAVE-O, though now he illustrates at RAVE-O.
Oh, isn't that great?
Can you believe that Dog and Frog is based on his dog, Brancusi?
Full
Oh,
circle. I love that.
it's
That's
so
great.
the dysgraphic son, David Wolfnoam, he's the manager of RAVE-O. I mean,
Wow.
are you kidding me? But we don't know that in the
How about,
beginning.
how about your purpose, right? Your purpose with that alone to spark all the purpose that you're helping all over the place. I mean, that's amazing.
It is just the most beautiful thing in the world, this season of gratitude, to be thankful that I was given the opportunity to study and to give what I learned to others in both theoretical and very practical ways. It's a great gift. But
That's
Adam,
awesome.
that's what you're doing too. This is what I mean, you do it more than I do. You have a podcast, you reach all these people, and that's just great.
Thank
And
you.
teachers every single day you get so tired. I remember, oh my God, I got colitis one year. Oh, Lord. I mean, really? Middle school, I had 45 seventh graders in one class,
Oof.
44 eighth graders in another. That was one of those inner city schools a long time ago. Oh my God, I know how hard it is. Oh, even thinking about it, I'm like, oh my God.
And no one can see your face, but I just saw your face, and yeah, you were taken back to that moment for a half a second.
It was a tough year, man. It was tough. But it all teach, I only want to say I understand the weariness of teachers, and I simply want to say you are doing God's work. You are doing something that no one else can do this moment than you. And those moments just cumulatively, you pass them on, but never ever forget how important you are.
That's amazing. On that note, we're going to take a break because that's a great
Okay.
positive stop point.
Yeah,
We're
good.
going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to explore some useful tips that you can start using in your classroom right now. More with
Good.
Dr. Maryanne Wolf right after this, so stay with us.
Behind every successful student is a teacher who feels supported. At Catapult Learning, we partner with educators through coaching, collaborative professional development, and classroom-proven tools. Our programs aren't just theory. They're actionable, relevant, and built to make your daily work easier and more effective. With 45 years of evidence-based success, Catapult provides the guidance and resources that help educators grow so students thrive. Catapult Learning, empowering teachers, inspiring futures. Learn more at catapultlearning.com.
Attention educators, meet the Logitech Zone Learn, the classroom headset designed for learners and built for schools. Engineered for comfort and durability, the Zone Learn delivers crystal clear audio, helping students focus and fully engage during lessons, group projects, and online learning. Built to last, its modular design adapts to any classroom setting and ensures a reliable, distraction-free learning experience. With Zone Learn, your students can hear the difference, which helps boost learning. For more information, visit logitech.com/ZoneLearn. Welcome back to Classroom Dynamics. We're talking with Dr. Maryanne Wolf today of UCLA. And look, we've had a great start to this conversation. I think a lot of important information and a lot of foundational information for teachers, especially if they're new and they're teaching a primary grade. From your extensive research, what are some of the most common misconceptions that teachers, or even parents for that matter, who like to read at home, still have about how children learn to read? And how can we shift that understanding? Because we were talking a little bit before about, a teacher teaches phonics. But when we talk about teachers saying, okay, I teach phonics, do they really understand what teaching phonics really does mean? So what would you say with that?
The first thing at the top is the myth or the misconception by many a parent and even some teachers and even a publisher or two with no names that reading is natural. It is not natural. The reading brain has to be formed and shaped, and to do so, it uses a very beautiful design principle. Now, I'm part of what's called the Collaborative on Neuroscience, Diversity and Learning at UCLA. And one of our major goals is to help people understand that neuroscience helps us understand reading as anything but natural. And that what we are as teachers doing is trying to incorporate in our teaching the major components of the reading brain and what the child brings to it that we can help connect. Okay, now we've talked about expanding foundational skills, and at the top of the list is phonics and phoneme awareness. And a lot of people, to answer the second part of your question, think that phonics is basically it's been maligned in the past incorrectly, but still somewhat understandably as just making sure the kids know grapheme phoneme correspondence rules. Extremely important. Yet, when you understand that principle alone, you have three different aspects to it. You have to have the cognitive epiphany, almost like Helen Keller, to connect water to the feel, to the feeling of the word in the mouth. They have to make a cognitive epiphany, a leap to understand that a word is made up of sounds and that the letters in that word represent each sound. That's cognitive. That's something that we have to help them understand. It does not come free. At the same time, grapheme and phoneme have worlds of knowledge underneath each of them. A lot of people are very aware now that learning a language is learning the basic phonemes of that language, and different languages have different even numbers of phonemes, not to mention different kinds of phonemes. That's a little lecture, if you will, for multilingual teaching, all its own. It's beautiful. But for us right now, this moment in this conversation, what I mean to say is that the phonemes in a language have to be connected to the graphemes for their best teaching. Here's where I believe, whether it's, I don't want to say it's a misconception, but a slightly different understanding of what should be going on is what I call the checklist phenomenon. You learn only these letters or these letter patterns, and you learn only these phonemes, and you are doing it in a separated way. I never want them separated. I want phonemes to have that representation of the letter right there. And a lot of our teaching right now is disconnected. So you are learning, oh, these are the phonemes in this language, these are the phonemes in that language, and and it's a really good thing. Claude Goldenberg and I talk about this. Oh my gosh, there's so many wonderful people in multilingual learning, but we agree totally that you do not separate the teaching of phoneme or the awareness of phonemes from an immediate connection to the letters they are representing. That's happening all over, the people doing list, this. No. Grapheme phoneme correspondence rules require linguistic, perceptual, and cognitive acts by that child. So phonics, to begin with, when you understand those three things in a better way, it's broader than a lot of times people are teaching. Now, people like Janine Herron and Margie Gillis in Connecticut are really helping us understand how important encoding is for our TK kids, that they're trying to understand how to write their names. Let's just use that as an example. And what you're doing is making that connection.
Not just a memorization or a regurgitation of it.
No. But they're making connections.
Right.
I encourage people to look at the work of Janine and Margie on this. But here's the broader point. If you're only doing grapheme phoneme correspondence rules without what I call a co-equal simultaneous elicitation of the meaning of a word, you are doing a disservice to yourself and the child. Because what you want is to have them understand that reading is to learn what a word is. And what a word is not just letters and sounds. A word is letters, sounds, meanings, functions, places and context, ways to tell stories. So you really, with a traditional or an older traditional view of phonics, I think we short-circuited, if you will, the reading brain circuit. So phonics for me has to be writ larger than what it is, but always in conjunction with these other aspects of what a word embodies in our brain. If you would just even see what a word is activating, you would see what I mean. It's not just activating visual word form area. Of course it is. It's not just activating those phonemic areas. It includes it, but it's also activating all this stuff, if you will. And I think in Reader Come Home, I had this beautiful diagram by Kat Studley, she's a cerebellar researcher, but she's a fabulous artist. And she showed my brain, actually, what my brain does when I look at the word tracks, okay? And for me, it's got these trapeze artists, it has trains, I think. And then it has Anna Karenina jumping into the tracks unfortunately, when she committed suicide, I hate to put it that way, but she's leaping into the tracks. Well, if I would do your brain, Adam, on tracks, I would have a different set of images, but they would be multiple. We want to be building the semantic network as we teach what I would call a phonics approach. A phonics approach should incorporate all these aspects of what a word means. And then you will have a more fluent, more accurate, more comprehending reader on your hand.
So what does that look like in a basic, let's just go really basic so everyone can understand the concept, a really basic lesson on a particular word in a kindergarten or even first grade class? What would that look like for the teacher so that they understand those multiple levels to be able to deliver that to that class?
Yes. Such a good thing, because in the first part we talked about RAVE-O. I'm going to give RAVE-O to the world. I mean, of course, not give, but sort of give.
Right.
But the principles
of
it, I want to give everyone. And the first principle is when you begin TK, first grade, begin with as I use the term, courtship with the language. And that's for every monolingual, bilingual, all for everybody. We want an expectation. Now, I'm going to say something that's a science of learning concept, but it's mostly a science of the learner concept. And that is, the learner needs to engage their attention. We need to get their attention started. So especially in kindergarten and first grade, they are ready to tell you things they know. As they get jaundiced in third grade, especially if they fail too long, it gets harder. But in the beginning, they are alive. Tchaikovsky said every child is a linguistic genius. And then he said, and then we go to school and it goes away. Well, let's capture that moment of the child's linguistic genius. So when that first lesson begins, it begins with and I use the word participation or elicitation of what they know. Now, two things that go on there. Sometimes they don't know a darn thing. And so we use the class to say, this. And so we're using a team approach to getting the kids accustomed to giving what they know. And as they listen to each other, they're each other expanding it for the class. But here's the but. Many teachers think that they have to teach all the time. And I'm one of them. Here I've talked too much, Adam. I've talked way too much. But
you've got my attention.
but the teachers need to lean back, if you will, and count on the class through their expectation that the kids will not just know something, but give it to each other. So I'm a strong believer in understanding when to talk and when to listen. And I want the kids to get accustomed to giving what they think. As you know, I didn't talk about in the last part, but one of my beautiful inventions from being an insomniac is I invented a little character called T-Lex. Try, think, Asaurus Lex. T-Lex. And it's a three-headed dinosaur. And it's for children to realize that when they hear a story or read a story, they want to think ahead, they learn all these things, and then they think back, a plot and character. But the most important head is think for yourself. And whether it's in reading or language or any area, how do we help them know we expect them to know things, and we want to use that and build on it. And it's a reciprocal.
I love that. Especially, you know why I really like that? Because, and we're going to talk about it with AI soon, that does happen to probably play a role, I'm sure, with AI, right?
Absolutely. Effort. If
they're not thinking for themselves, we've got a problem.
And the idea that they can rely on external for everything, that builds no ability to evaluate. So when I told you I had all these E's in my head, One of the E's is the expectation that I want the child to feel, I know you know all these things and I want to use them and I want to build on them and I want you to build them because we have a shared, here's the other E, enterprise. We are working together to build that brain of yours, and we know it takes effort, which is the other E. The biggest problem I see with AI, to anticipate what you're going to ask me, is that it is about reliance on external sources rather than building internal sources that give, through effort, the ability to evaluate. And I get really sad when I think that we are all, I don't know whether I said this to Ezra Klein. I'm not sure. Did I say it to you, Adam? I invented a word that I'm worried they'll all become cerebral wall E's. Did I do that with you?
Yes.
I'm not sure. Maybe you're my source. You listened to it from me because I'd never said, whatever happened, I had never said it before. But that, without effort, we atrophy. And we can rely on these other things, and I certainly do, you do in various ways. But by heavens, we have to have the basis for evaluation built internally year after year of our children, year after year. Effort, expectation, shared enterprise. Those are 3 E's that I really want people. Engagement.
It's important. It's so important because there are going to be steps taken in some school districts where kids are going to start to learn how to use AI, how to prompt, how to get what they want out of something, especially when it comes to, their own writing and asking for almost extra support when the teacher maybe is not there. And so going back to your TK, pre-K, K1 kids, if they have not learned all that they need to know, at least in that portion of time, when they get to their 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade beyond to use AI, that's not going to hurt them a lot. It's going to hurt them tremendously.
Yes. Effort, I've had this conversation with many people, including people in Silicon Valley, who behind the curtain tell me, not my child won't be on any device. They literally say that. So, but the point is that the brain requires the stuff of effort to build circuitry. Now, if we begin right from the start to just have the assumption or the expectation that machine will do it for us, we won't build the circuit ourselves. So for me, it's never the binary, you only do print or you only do digital and AI. No. We have to become truly digitally wise as a species, because we cannot, at this point, we cannot just farm it out and replace the extremely important human interaction aspect for learning. I've seen a lot of these different apps in which it seems like that machine based on a behavior is differentiating the child and doing XYZ. I'm all for practice. I'm all for using it to supplement and complement. I am absolutely opposed to it taking the place of any teacher's ability to ascertain what is really needed in what area, when, and for how long. And that for how long requires monitoring, but not just the behavioral monitoring of a machine, but the monitoring in which you see, and we talked about social emotion a little bit, what is the reaction to this? How can we do it somewhat differently so that we know this is going to be learned and not just, routinely, rotely memorized or whatever. And then the last thing in this topic,
right, because adults, right, we've learned that already. We've gotten to that point. So using AI, it doesn't affect us as much as it's going to affect someone who has not gotten to that point yet.
You're saying the point. We have to have the circuit built so we can evaluate the output of what's going to help us. That's not a binary approach. It is, I believe, the true, what I call the digitally wise person is going to say, what's the purpose and what are you shorting by using it, or what are you gaining? But laziness is all in us who are so, I call it the rapacious appetite for efficiency. We have so little time. We're going so fast. We're in this accelerated world around us, and we farm out more and more till imperceptibly we can become the cerebral wall-e's too, because we don't take time to evaluate. This is a really, there's a striking examples that are coming out, but I'm not interested in the examples that are exceptions, that a lawyer created and used ChatGPT to. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in what will make us preserve our humanity, our empathy, and our critical thinking when aided by, but never replaced by, those aspects in AI. Humanity has to be thought about in, I believe, ever wiser ways right now. We have to preserve the species at its best, and it's not by complete reliance on the external, but really an evaluation of our most important values as we become ever more efficient, et cetera, et cetera. Efficiency does not replace moral values. That's not where I intended to go.
Let me ask you this now. So if we it really is important, because that's unfortunately or fortunately their world, right? That's what they're experiencing. That's what they're growing up with. They're born into it. And I think we joked about this before, where, by the time they're 5 minutes old, there's probably 1,000 pictures of them on somebody's phone.
Yeah.
But if we take the AI portion out of that for a moment and come back down to just the classroom without the technology, how do teachers then expand into other curriculum areas? How can teachers then incorporate phonics and phonemic awareness into math or science lessons, so that it's not just in a reading block of time or a writing block, but you can actually weave that in to other areas?
Great question. And there's a group in San Francisco called SERP. And basically, people should look for SERP. And what they have created all these materials about how to teach, especially vocabulary concepts in different grades across different disciplines. And so your question may begin with phonics, but actually it immediately, for me, goes into the concept underneath the word that you're teaching, and morphology. So just think of the wonderful ways that you can use science and look at the morphemes in some biosynthesis. You can just imagine all the ways you can have the kids look at some of these scientific words or social studies words and say, whoa, haven't you learned these little parts? Now we call them ender benders or roots or beginner benders. Have you seen this beginning bender? I'm just going to say biomarker because it's an easy one. Look at this word. What do you think? It has bio, mark, and It has it's a beginner bender morpheme and an ender bender morpheme and a root word in the middle. Can we figure it out before we even get into the lesson? So again, you're using these principles from phonics or morphology, etc., and meaning, semantic meaning, so that you are building these ways of using your skills, whether we want to call it phonics or POSSUM. You're using those skills in other areas, and as SERP did this so beautifully, but and those materials are all free. Just look it up, SERP. But the principles that you and I are always interested in is that we can take an understanding that we get from studying reading into all of these other disciplines, whether it's math, social science, or science. Now, we love, I will just say this, in our work in intervention, we love it when we connect our RAVE-O words. I've always been using BAT. So we connect to a partnership with something called Bookalicious. And Bookalicious has this avatar and the child makes, and the reading level, the reading interest. And then, because let's say the word is bat, it gives you all the books about bats right then and there in your library, in the school library or the town library, or you can, if for parents, they can actually buy it if they want. But the point is, you're extending what you know and learn in that reading block to other areas. And I always am for, and I know teachers never have enough time, but for even a week or monthly to look at what everybody's teaching when they are in different areas, or a single, of course, it's different when you're on the same class, but to make an effort to coordinate. But you could do it. And not only can you do it, it is helping consolidate knowledge from the reading area by its new emphasis from, let's say, social science or math. It consolidates.
I love that. It's such a master class. It really is. This is such a master class for teachers who are listening right now. I'm just going to pause you for 1 second. For teachers that are listening, this is such a master class in not only just teaching phonics when your schedule block says you should be teaching phonics, but now to be able to expand that, think about ways you can actually bring other subject areas in and still do phonics, sneak that in. I mean, the words are probably going to multiply, just amazingly over time.
Well, Adam, one of the things that you're just saying comes right out of the science of learning, because one of the things we want to do is practice. And if you get practice across disciplines, that's one thing. Another is retrieval. How do we retrieve the knowledge in any area and generalize it to another? And here you're generalizing from what you're learning in the reading area into these other areas. And so you are practicing, you're retrieving, you're generalizing. These are all aspects of how we make learning, if you will, deeper, broader. So what you've just said goes right out of this, the science of learning.
Bullying affects every school, but together we can change the story. Box Out Bullying brings powerful bullying prevention education to life through engaging interactive theater that gets students thinking, participating, and learning in meaningful ways. Through dynamic school assemblies, classroom workshops, and training for educators and families, Box Out Bullying equips entire school communities with the tools to build empathy, confidence, and respect. Whether in person or online, these high-energy programs inspire students to be upstanders, not bystanders, and help create safer, more inclusive learning environments. Make your school a place where every student feels seen, supported, and valued. Box Out Bullying. Empower, include, respect. For more, visit boxoutbullying.com today.
Looking to spark excitement in your classroom and save time? Head over to Highly Motivated on Teachers Pay Teachers. From engaging lesson plans to creative lap books and test prep tools, these resources are designed to inspire learning and take the planning stress off your plate. Highly Motivated, motivating teaching resources that engage and inspire. For more, search Highly Motivated on Teachers Pay Teachers today.
This has been such a fantastic conversation. I know we joked about this before we came on that we might have to have a part 3. I really think we should have a part 3 at some point.
By then, maybe. I told you I had this AI article this week in New York Times Magazine. It's not by me, of course, but it's by Carlo Rotella, Heads in the Cloud. And there's another one. Everything was this week's. There was the Shanker Institute paper. What I should do, Adam, is give you the QR code for 2 things: the Shanker Institute white paper, Elbow Room, and 6 modules on literacy and dyslexia that our collaborative on neuroscience, diversity, and learning have. So I'm going to send you 2 QR codes that will, give your viewers more. And then they can read. Oh, did I tell you there was a BBC one? A 5-minute BBC story on reading also just came out. But the reality was that it was 5 minutes of a very interesting, succinct way of looking at reading for parents, policymakers, and teachers. So I'll send you things, and then you can give them to anybody who wants it.
Fantastic. I know they're going to definitely jump in. It really is so interesting, and it's like you said, lifelong learners should continue to, enhance themselves and dive into it, especially when we have the information now. And 20 years of research doesn't mean, it just goes by the wayside. I mean, 20 years is 20 years. That's impressive. As always, it's been a pleasure having you. It's such a privilege to talk to you. And I'm always interested in what you have to say with the science of reading and all the new things that keep emerging as we go through this, especially with technology and that heavy use of technology. So again, thank you for sharing your insight and all the continued work on the RAVE-O program, POSSUM framework, and of course, just reminding us how, as teachers, what we need to do together to help every child discover every joy there is about reading. And even with technology being front and center at times, we all understand this is the time we live in, but this is the way it is. But before we go, just tell everyone where they can find out more about the RAVE-O program, POSSUM framework, and all the research that's been done around this so far.
Oh, that's so good. They can just look up David at, that's my son, I told you, David at Nido Learning, NIDO learning.com. You can also do Maryanne at nidolearning.com. And Nido, just so you know this, Adam, means nest. We went to Reggio Emilia and we saw the nest, which is Nido, Nido in Italian. And we want to build the sense of a reading nest for our children. So we would love to have people we do have a few people in New York who have begun, and we'll just hope to get more and more. But we would love to have people know about us. As I said, even if they never learn RAVE-O itself, to learn the principles, and may they be useful for all. So this Nido Learning will give you a lot of access. And actually, Adam, I want to tell you this. For you, over time, we're going to make Nido Learning like a resource. We're going to have articles by other reading scholars, a group called the Peaceniks, who are bit set on bringing teachers of different methods together. And we hope to have resources for parents. So RAVE-O will be the beginning of Nido Learning, but we want to make it ever stronger and better for everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, listen, for everyone who's been listening, thank you for tuning in today. Make sure that you share what you've learned or any takeaways or reflections that you've had. And of course, tag us on X at Class Dynamics or Instagram at Classroom Dynamics Podcast. You can also find out our links, including our sponsors, on our link tree at Classroom Dynamics. We always look forward to hearing your thoughts on our episodes and sharing the different ways in which you're using what you've learned throughout our programs. You can also help support Classroom Dynamics with as little as $3 a month at classroomdynamicspodcast.buzzsprout.com. And of course, once again, our returning guest that we absolutely love having, I'd like to thank Dr. Maryanne Wolf for joining us today on Classroom Dynamics. Thanks for being with us again and for the time, of course, that you gave up for us. And, like I said, it's always a pleasure. And of course, we definitely want you to come back and we'll talk more because there's always going to be more, right?
There's always more. It's an evolving reading process for our species. I love it. Thank you also, Adam. And I'm going to say one more word. You used the word that I believe is so important for all of us, and that's joy. May we bring it to our students, our friends, our families, and our world right now. So joy to you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
That was great. Well, that's a wrap on this episode of Classroom Dynamics. I hope today's conversation sparked something meaningful for you. Maybe a new idea, a fresh perspective, or just a little boost of motivation to take back to your classroom. Remember, it's never too late to strengthen your craft, and if there's ever a moment to re-energize your work, why not make it today? I'm Adam Todd, and you've been listening to Classroom Dynamics, a teacher podcast. Follow us on X at Class Dynamics and on Instagram at Classroom Dynamics Phonics podcast. If you haven't already, go to your favorite podcast platform like Apple Podcasts or Spotify and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. We'll be back soon with more captivating conversations, inspiring stories, and strategies that you can implement into your everyday routines. Until then, keep that spark alive and never underestimate the incredible impact you have as an educator. You're more powerful and inspirational than you think. Did you miss our Rethinking Bullying Prevention in Schools Through Performance episode? If so, we sat down with Jeremy Rubenstein of Box Out Bullying to explore how high-energy theater can spark empathy, inclusion, and lasting change in school culture. Discover how storytelling can become your school's most powerful tool for kindness.
Oh man, Adam, it's changed everything. You know, I remember when I was in school, right? Back definitely in the BC before Corona, but like, you know, that's when the dial-up was there. It's like, it used to end when you left the building, you know, follows kids home, into their bedrooms, into their phones. It's 24/7. There's no break. It's like there's no off switch. And, you know, when I talk to parents, I tell them that when you give your child an iPad or a smartphone with access to the internet, you don't give the internet to your kid. You give your kid to the internet.